Les questions sont ouvertes. Qui pose une question après ce discours très riche? Allez-y, Monsieur White.
En français.
No, I tell it in English. I mean, it's in all the discussions we had since the beginning, speaking of the role of museums today, you insist on the fact that a museum is not only a place where you display works of art, and in your case, very beautiful works of art, but it's also a place which, in the city today, plays a central role. In terms of a social role, but also a very important role in terms of education. Is it something you can develop thinking to the future National Museum in Damascus?
Thank you for the question, because you remind me that when we talk about museums and the number of museums we have in the country, we can't forget that actually Syria is one big museum in the artifacts and in the archaeological sites that are present in the country. What is important then is that the relationship between these artifacts and these architectural sites there's a direct connection between them and between the citizens of today. I often go to Palmyra, and I'm amazed constantly by the magnificence of that site. But then when I talk to the locals, the residents of the community, they look at me and they say, well, this is our back garden. And in a way, this is important, because for them, it's not that they underestimate what Palmyra is and the significance of it, but they feel that this is a part of who they are today. As I mentioned, Monsieur Loiret, as we continue to reform our education system and put skills at the core of what we're trying to do, we're also reforming our approach to citizenship, in the sense that for Syria's change to be sustainable, it needs to be done by Syrians for Syrians. And with a young population, there is plenty of energy and plenty of passion for that to happen. The museums will provide an opportunity for us not just to reflect on our past, but also to think of how that past can be brought or used to develop our nation tomorrow. And here it's the difference between, if this doesn't happen, we end up having a legacy of incredible buildings that tell a lovely story of the past, but a reality that is very, very different, and a reality that is potentially could be dogged, as I said, by extremism or sectarianism or any kind of narrow-minded ideologies. And so education here is crucial to ensure that we teach our younger generation the spirit of openness and engagement that have historically defined who we are as a people, as a society.
Vous savez, Madame, le patrimoine culturel n'est pas tout à fait le premier intérêt des courants fondamentalistes. On a vu ça dans le monde. Et la Syrie, de par ses données démographiques, est à majorité musulmane. Et pourtant, son environnement témoigne d'une montée croissante des extrémismes religieux et des fondamentalismes à outrance. La Syrie est un pays laïque. Le système est laïque, le système de l'éducation est laïque. Comment la Syrie, avec cette vision future de la culture, va gérer cet environnement, cette réalité et son système laïque? Merci.
I'd like to disagree with you, if you don't mind. Our system is not secular. Our society is secular. And the secular nation, the secular nature of our society comes from the very fact that the religions, the birthplace of religions came from the Middle East. And the birthplace of religions came from the Middle East, but also from Syria. And whereas in other countries and other societies, there is a sense of pride in the coexistence and the tolerance that exists, And I hear this often from people that come to Syria, and they compliment me and say that your society has such great coexistence and such great tolerance. But actually, I disagree with this notion. Coexistence and tolerance is important, but it's important to societies that need it. To a society like Syria, we reject it. We feel that we are beyond these notions. And here what I mean specifically, when you coexist with something, you're essentially bringing two elements that are very different together. And you're trying to find a way for these elements to live or to coexist in a peaceful manner. Whereas in Syria, the religions are part of our identity, of our human spirit. And so it's impossible for you to say, or for me to say to you, that how does my left leg coexist with my right hand? What do I mean specifically? The Umayyad Mosque. The Umayyad Mosque is one of the most important Islamic monuments for the Muslim world. But for Syria, for Christians and Muslims, it is a part of our heritage. We learn about the significance of the Umayyad Mosque in our history books. And as such, Christian Muslims are proud of the mosque, as are Muslims. When we pray in the mosque, we pray in front of St. John, the tomb of St. John the Baptist. So every Muslim praying in this mosque, and again, it's the third most holy mosque in the world for Islam, prays in front of the tomb of a Christian saint. Likewise, Ma'lula, where we still speak the language of Christ, Straight Street. These are, these for me, they define who we are as a people. This is part of our identity. We learn these elements in our history books, not in religious studies. And as such, Christianity and Islam together define who we are as a people. And that's where our secular society comes from. Historically, today, and of course we need to make sure that it continues into the future.
Thank you very much for that amazing talk. The question that comes up is a little bit provocative. Is culture in some way a gateway for a more peaceful time in the region?
Make the mistake of believing that culture is the solution to everything. There needs to be a culture of peace in the region, for peace treaties to be signed, and for them to work. So you need a culture of peace beforehand, then you need a peace treaty, and then you need a culture of peace to be able to live a normal existence and a normal life. The problems in the Middle East are problems associated with occupation and problems associated with rights. So as such, the challenge is not cultural as much as it is rights abuse and occupied land. Now that doesn't mean that culture can't play a role. In fact, it does play a role. In Syria, despite the conflict and despite the fact that we live in a region that is in constant turmoil and constant instability, our nation still believes that peace is the only solution. And so the culture of peace that exists in the country is the impetus for us to be able to engage with like-minded governments to be able to reach a treaty. Now, once that treaty is signed, you need a culture of peace beyond that to be able to ensure that it doesn't remain ink on paper, but actually affects and brings the promises of sustainable peace. But I don't think we should mix the two. You may ask me, do we see a partner in this process? Like I said, the country that I represent believes that peace is the only solution to the region, and as such we embrace peace, we need peace. But for that peace to become a reality, there needs to be a culture of peace in the region as a whole for that reality to happen.
Good evening. I was very much impressed by your definition of heritage, social definition of heritage, and everywhere in Syria. And I was very much impressed by what you are launching for Syria in the coming April. One question is necessary to be asked, provocative maybe, is how to deal with, let's say, the power of money. Means if you define heritage in a large way, you have, as you said exactly, you have areas in the cities, culture of some communities, etc., which has to be protected. Now, one of the most developing sectors in Syria is the real estate. And you have the power of money coming and saying, let's take this out or this out. And you have, as UNESCO is saying, some endangered places, Faisal Street in Damascus or whatever. And UNESCO put the light, red light, on some of these issues. So how to deal with this, beside the other cultural or identity issues? How to deal with the money, the power of money?
Well, if we had more money, we'd be able to do more in our cultural development program, but that's a slightly different topic. The issues that you've talked about, the price of real estate specifically, is focused at the big cities. Now, the network of archaeological sites that exists around the country, the 5,000 archaeological sites that exist around the country, are spread across the whole nation. And whereas we may see spikes in real estate in one city, we're not seeing them everywhere else. When I mentioned the fact that as our economy grows and as we continue to diversify, we need to think about inclusive growth rather than just continue to raise the statistic. So 6% vis-a-vis 7 or 8% is not really the measure we're looking for. It's how inclusive that growth is across the society. The very direct relationship, as I said, between Syria's people and the artifacts that are in our backyard, so to speak, is the first element of protection, because they represent, they are the guardians of this heritage. And whereas we may not have the resources required to be able to renovate and restore all the artifacts and all the architecture, we at least have enough custodians to make sure that they're not demolished or destroyed in a manner that is not representative of who we are. But fundamentally, as I said, the very vision, the very essence of the vision we're trying to promote is that this cultural heritage is it's the heart of everything we're trying to do. So it's not happening in parallel to economic development and in parallel to education reform and in parallel to civil society expansion and participation. It's happening as a core of all these facets together.
Nous sommes à peu près parvenus au terme du temps que nous nous étions fixés. Et si vous le permettez, Madame, nous allons maintenant envisager d'aller à la réception. Je voudrais vraiment, en notre nom à tous, vous remercier pour cette vision de la Syrie et d'une Syrie en mouvement, d'une vision encourageante, optimiste, politique au meilleur sens du terme, et qui à tous, je crois, nous a appris beaucoup sur la Syrie, appris beaucoup sur ce qui se passe en Syrie. Merci, Madame.
Merci, merci.